Loving.
Unselfish.
Steady.
Leader.
Constant.
Provider.
Consistent.
Hard worker.
Loyal.
Dedicated. Strength.
Understanding.
Kind-hearted.
Trustworthy.
Integrity.
Committed.
Patient.
A hard worker.
Respect.
Dedicated.
Loving.
God-fearing.
Gentle.
Encouraging.
Quiet.
Funny.
Grumpy.
Yeah, I get a great story for you. One of my dad's pet peeves growing up was for me to smack my gum or smack my food. And one time my dad and I are working together doing some construction project. And while we were marking a board, getting ready to cut it, I was evidently smacking my gum really loud. And it was irritating my dad, so my dad just stopped what he was doing and he looked up at me and he stuck his hand out and said, "Spit!" And I didn't have any idea what he was talking about. And so I looked at his hand and he was serious. He said, "Spit!" So I said, "Pfft," and spit in his hand. And his face turned 15 types of red. And he said, "Your gum!" It was as fast as I could spit it out. But he didn't always say exactly what he meant. You sometimes had to read between the lines of what he was talking about. But it took me a second to figure that one out.
I've been a dad for over 40 years now. You know, when you've done something that long, especially something as important as being a father, you think a whole lot about, I wonder how I'm doing. I knew one dad that had that thought, and he used to wonder what his kids were thinking, really how they were doing. He had two little girls, one age 5, one age 3, and one day he was walking by their room and he saw them in there, and they were talking to each other. And he thought, I wonder what they're talking about. And so he went in and he could hear that the older daughter, about age 5, was talking to the younger daughter, about age 3, about God. And he felt real good about that. He said, you know, boy, it's really passing on. It's real discipleship. He felt good about that. Got a little closer to hear what they were saying. And the older daughter was telling the younger one about God. He says, you know, he's like our heavenly daddy. And it occurred to him, wow, as a dad, as a father, I'm the image of God in that little girl's life. We become aware as time goes on as dads that, you know, we're imperfect. We fail. But I have something encouraging that I've told myself and I tell others. There's something that I can do as an imperfect dad that God the Father is not able to do. God the Father can never lead and teach by example, dealing with what do you do when you've messed up? What do you do when you've messed up? Well, one of the things that I have found to do, it's best to do, is when you have messed up, you need to admit it. Now, sometimes you think, wow, if I admit that, my kids will think I'm imperfect. Well, the truth is, they already know that. They already figured that out. In fact, they might just wonder if maybe you haven't figured that one out yet. It'll make you think next time when you're being selfish, irritable, maybe rude. You know, I don't want to have to go and say, I was wrong. Will you forgive me? So, yeah, we have the same title as God, but aren't you glad your kids call you Dad and not just Father?
Well, some of the things that my dad taught me, he taught me algebra and geometry, and he taught me how to hold a pencil behind my ear, and he taught me to bite my tongue when I'm concentrating, and he taught me to mix butter and jelly together for a dessert because his dad had taught him that. And he also taught me to be afraid of a baseball. And he taught me how to dislike working on cars. But Dad taught me that tough times don't last, tough people do. And that hard work can overcome a lot of disadvantages. Dad taught me just really what it looks like to be a real man, to be a godly man. Dad showed me that a real man can be both gentle and loving. And he taught me that a real man and a godly man does the right thing even when nobody's watching and when nobody's going to find out otherwise, because God's watching and He knows. Dad taught me that there's nothing in this world that's quite as important as family, and that the greatest gift or the greatest thing that a dad could ever do for his children is to love their mother. And my dad was my hero all my life, and I grew up watching and learning, and I grew up to be a daddy just like him.
My dad was amazingly adventurous. He would take us to, in fact, he took my closest brother and I out to the Bahamas one time to go scuba diving. But we didn't just go scuba diving, we went night scuba diving. It's the craziest thing I've ever done in my life. And then we all loaded up as a family when I was a little kid, and we went to Colorado. We're in a van. Well, there was a snowstorm about 45 minutes out of the way. And instead of him going the same course, he decided, you know what, let's go hit the snowstorm. So we went 45 minutes out of his way to hit the snowstorm, which gets no better when you're a kiddo. It's great. Dad was also incredibly tough. We went fishing one time, and he got a treble hook stuck in his hand, and he had me put the needle nose pliers right here and push that hook all the way through his hand. To this day, I still don't know how he did that, but I knew right then how tough my dad was. Dad was also always there, regardless what the event was, whether it was drama, whether it was a football or track or whatever. I always heard my dad in the stands yelling as hard as he could for me, and that's priceless for a kid growing up in high school. But to describe my dad probably beyond anything else, he's got an amazing heart. I know there's a lot of men that maybe are bigger than my dad, but I don't know bigger hearts than my dad. He's an amazing man. And Dad was incredibly godly too. He would always be, as I woke up in the morning, he would be there reading his Bible, doing a Bible study, and he always prayed before meals, so he was an incredible example for me. And I don't know if Dad's out there watching this right now, but I tell this that hit my brain on the way home yesterday, and I thought, this is very appropriate for my dad. Every night when I lay my daughter down to bed, I always tell her that if I could line up all the little girls in the whole wide world, that I'd choose her. And so I want to tell my dad that if I could line up all the men in the whole world, I would choose you. And I love you, Dad.